On our right-hand side, these sheds, they are all our rowing clubs, owned by private schools and universities. Rowing's quite a popular sport down here on the Yarra. And on the other side of the rowing clubs, we start the gardens precinct, starting with the Alexander Gardens, where the large floral clock is. Next to that, the King's Domain Gardens, with the Shrine of Remembrance, and further upstream, the Botanic Gardens. But I'll tell you about them a bit later on. For now, the grass area on our left-hand side is Melbourne's newest parkland, separating Federation Square with the sports precinct. This grass area on our left is officially known as Birrarung. Birrarung is an Aboriginal word for river of mist, and Ma is the side of the river the park is located on. Now, we love our parks in Melbourne. We also love our artwork. We like putting art pieces in the parkland to entertain people as they wander through. Right in the middle of Birrarung Ma, we have this lovely sculpture. It is all hand-painted ceramic tiles. This piece of artwork has 2 heads and 3 legs. This piece of artwork is officially known as the Angel. What part of it looks like an angel? I have no ideas. But if that's what angels look like, boy, am I in trouble. Puts a new meaning to you look like an angel, doesn't it? The other piece of artwork is our hand-carved wombat underneath the trees. You get to see the best part of the wombat, his backside. Some people call them national treasures, farmers call them pests. I guess it all depends on where you live. Interesting enough, the backside of the wombat is the most interesting part. You see, it is the only animal that actually has a square poop. They say that's how they mark their territory, and the square poop will not roll down the hill. I still can't figure out the mechanics of making square poop, but I guess it all works. Now, the next section of water I'll tell you about is this straight section in front of us, officially known as the first cut, the first straightening of the river, been nicknamed the Henley Cut. You see, in the mid-1800s, we were colonials. England had a rowing regatta, Henley on the Thames. We wanted our own rowing regatta, so we got Henley on the Yarra. The landing on our right-hand side, officially known as Henley Landing. And this white tower on our right-hand side was the judge's box, lined up with a small white post on the left-hand side, formulates the finishing line. And all rowing was held in a downstream motion, opposite to what we're travelling now. We still have Henley on the Yarra, July each year, but it's mainly just for the universities nowadays. Now, during the month of March, we close off this section of water to all traffic. We lift the speed limit, and this is where we have our Moomba Masters Water Skiing Championships, quite renowned throughout the world, with a slalom run and a ski jump. Moomba is an Aboriginal word for let's get together and party, and that's what we do. We have a party on the banks of the Yarra, lots of activities for young and old on either grass section. Now, as we head on up here, if you look on top of the trees on our right-hand side, you see this lovely cream building. Green tower there, flying a yellow flag. That is the governor's residence. The yellow flag means the governor is in residence. She's not overseas or interstate. And the other silver roof you can see behind the gum trees, that is the Sydney Myer Music Bowl, donated by Mr. Sydney Myer, a wealthy man and music enthusiast. He used to have free open-air concerts in there until he got together with the council and they built the amphitheatre of the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. Most common use is carols by candlelight at Christmas time. Now on our left-hand side we start the sports precinct, starting with the National Tennis Centre. The brown roof surrounds Margaret Court Arena. Next to that, the white tubular roof of Rod Laver Arena. Next to that, another white tubular roof of John Cain Arena. Having the Australian Open means it has to be held in an open tennis court. The roof of Rod Laver and John Cain built in 2 halves. They can open the roof and have a nice outdoor tennis court. And when the tennis is finished, they close the roof, cover the tennis courts over with boards, and place seats in the centre there, and turn them into entertainment venues. Quite versatile stadiums, anything from basketball to wrestling, Disney on Ice and the Wiggles. A lot of major concerts and conferences are held in there as well. John Cain Arena also has an indoor cycling track underneath the seats. Quite versatile stadiums indeed. And this bridge in front of us, officially known as the Swan Street Bridge, connecting onto Swan Street in Richmond. The fleet sections on this bridge, they actually have LED lights in them. If you're down on the water's edge in the evening, come down, have a look at our Swan Street Bridge. It does give off a lovely pink colour. In fact, if you're on the other side of the bridge looking back towards the city, it does make quite a fantastic postcard picture with the big bridge in the foreground and the city lights in the background. And as we go through the bridge, on this side and the next, looking in between Rod Laver and John Keane, you can see the blue steel surrounding the MCG, Melbourne Cricket Ground, our biggest stadium in Australia, over 100,000 spectators during the sports. Most common use of MCG is Aussie Rules Football, international cricket, and a lot of visiting football and major concerts and conferences as well. Big game, Anzac Day, Collingwood taking on Essendon. As we've cleared the bridge on our left-hand side, you can see another stadium in a V formation. This was the 1956 Olympic swimming pool. It was the first Olympic swimming pool in the world, built with a roof over the top of it. Today everyone has indoor aquatic centres, but we were the first, still housing the original facade of the 1956 Olympic Games. That's where Dawn Fraser won gold in her swimming events. Now after the Games, the pool did form some severe cracks, water escaping back into the river. Several attempts to repair, none of them successful, so what they decided to do was to fill the pool in, board it over and turn it into a basketball stadium. It was known as the Glass House. Today it has been taken over yet again, now officially known as the AIA Centre, one of our sponsors of the football club. You see, this is now the home ground of the Magpies Collingwood football team, Aussie Rules Football. The next stadium with the 4 light towers on top of the trees, simply known as Olympic Park. There was an athletics track in there used prior to the Olympic Games as a warm-up track. When the main event came on, all they had to do was walk across the road and go to the MCG. The inside square grass area was used for soccer and rugby, but today it also has been taken over by the Collingwood football team, now known as Olympic Park Oval, the home ground of the Magpies. And that all came about because we built another stadium. Looking through the trees, you can see the white superstructure there. That is Amy Park, AAMI Amy Park. That is now the home ground of Melbourne Storm Rugby League and A-League Soccer. 35,000 spectators during the sports. That superstructure there, also looking like a piece of artwork. It's meant to resemble soccer balls all bunched together. It also has LED lights in it. During a nighttime game, they can colour it in the home team colours. And when it's not used for sports, it also turns into an open-air concert venue. The last major concerts we had in there was Elton John, Queen and Adam Lambert, all pre-COVID. Let's hope we get some more open-air concerts in there this year. And that's all our sports precinct, all bunched together, so you can find your way around easy concert venues, utilising the large car parks of the MCG and Rod Laver Arena car parks. Now as we're heading on up here, looking to our right hand side, you can see nice manicured lawns, not too steep, quite a popular bank, the right hand bank, so much so the council's put the semicircular bluestone objects up there. They are electric barbecues, in between them picnic tables, and the right hand bank does get quite a lot of use during the summer months. Everyone coming down having a picnic or a barbecue on the banks of the Yarra. The right hand bank being more favoured than the left because of that beautiful picturesque street up there, that is Alexandra Avenue. And on the other side of Alexandra Avenue, we have the world famous Botanic Gardens. Quite renowned gardens throughout the world, over 8 hectares of land, 10,000 different plant life and fauna grow in the gardens there. Now if anyone's gone for a walk through the gardens or plans to go for a walk, you will come across the ornamental lakes or duck ponds. A lot of people believe they were man-made, but that's not true. They're actually the original course of the Yarra River. You see, the original course of the Yarra was very narrow, very windy. In fact, on the other side of the bridge here in front of us, the river used to go out to the left for a kilometre, winding and bending its way through the MCG car park, That was all swampland, eventually crossing the current course here at 90-degree angles, winding and bending its way all the way down through the city. In fact, Albert Park Lake is part of the original course of the Yarra. But Melbourne was very prone to flooding. Back then we had a major flood. The water rose 12 metres. The river was 2 kilometres wide. So we had to straighten out the course of the river. With the straightening of the river, we left the duck ponds in the gardens there. In fact, all the Yarra River in the city here is all man-made. It's all been altered in one sense or another, widened, straightened, deepened, or diverted completely, or to alleviate the flooding problem. Also, with the straightening of the river, made the construction of this bridge in front of us quite unique. This is the Morel Bridge, built by our town. Named after one of our town councillors, but built by our famous engineer, Sir John Monash. He is the gentleman who introduced us into steel reinforced concrete. We weren't too sure about this building technique. We asked him to build his bridge on dry land. Once the bridge was complete, we still weren't too sure how strong it was. So we had a team of men going back and forth on the bridge with horse and cart, carrying tons of bluestone rock, proving to the local residents it was a strong, stable bridge. We agreed. We opened it up to traffic. As horse and cart was travelling over the top, that's when we dug out the course of water to flow in underneath. So in effect, we built this bridge backwards, built the bridge, put the traffic on top, then we put the water in underneath. No longer used as a traffic bridge, it is a pedestrian bridge. Allows pedestrians to cross the river without interference with motor vehicles. The bridge has 3 main arches. In the corners of each arch we have artwork. In this artwork we have dragons. Why do we have dragons on our bridge? Well, in the late 1800s, dragons were like lions, like gargoyles, but were placed on all our buildings to protect us from evil. It's worked so well. Today, we no longer need lions, dragons or gargoyles on our buildings. We no longer have evil here in Melbourne. And I'm sure you all believe me too. Just don't watch the news. The next bridge in front of us, officially known as the Hoddle Bridge, connecting onto Hoddle Street on the left-hand side, named after Sir Robert Hoddle. He was the gentleman who planned out Melbourne CBD. Now, when he was planning out Melbourne, he was criticised for wasting too much Crown land. There was only 3,000 people living in Melbourne at the time. But we were in the midst of a gold rush. He knew Melbourne was going to develop to a major city. So he said the wide streets enabled horse and cart to do a U-turn anywhere in the city without congesting traffic. The square grid pattern that makes it easy to find your way around Melbourne, north, south, east and west. Each major block has a major roadway. In between them they all have a laneway. That's so every major building could have 2 entry points, a front door and a back door. Quite the envy of all major cities around the world today. But if you were to ask any local where the Hoddle Bridge is, a lot of people won't be able to tell you. You see, a lot of the locals refer to this as the Punt Road Bridge. Why? Because Punt Road runs off to the right-hand side, and that got its name because it used to be the roadway which led down to a punt, which people used to cross the river. You see, back in the mid to late 1800s, this was all farmland. In fact, there was a large winery either side of Punt Road. There were no bridges here. And on the other side of the bridge here, there was a wealthy farmer, a gentleman by the name of Sir John Stratton. He had land on both sides of the river. Being such a wealthy farmer, he purchased himself a punt so he could move his livestock from one paddock to another. Now he was interrupted by neighbours, asked to be ferried across the river for one emergency or another. He started getting annoyed. They were interfering with his farm life. He decided, if you're going to waste my time, you have to pay for it. He started charging people. That backfired. People then thought it was a public service, so they came down with their numbers. And he gave up farming and operated the first commercial punt on the river. Now, when they wanted to build the bridge in the 1930s, they asked him to move so they could build the bridge. He refused. They were trying to put him out of business. The government demanded. The council actually took Mr. Stratton to court. The council actually lost their court battle. Once we cleared the bridge, if you look to our right, you will see Punt Road lines up with this landing gear. The council losing their court battle, they had to move their bridge 100 feet downstream So now we have this lovely yes bend in the roadway there, which all the drunk drivers appreciate so much. I used to think it was two councils not being able to get two straight lines together, until I found out the truth. Now when they built the bridge, it did slowly put Mr. Stratton out of business. People were crossing the river a lot quicker and a lot cheaper. Mr. Stratton, like I said, was quite a smart man, quite a wealthy man. In fact, as we head on up here, if you look on top of the trees on our right hand side, you will see this lovely cream building. This was his family home, named after the family name, Stratton Heights. 3 generations of the Stratton family lived in our house. Quite an amazing building. It's actually built on the design of a bow of a ship. If you sit in that front lounge in there looking at the river, it feels like you're actually moving. He built an exact replica of that house, but to a smaller scale, and that was the servants' quarters. And that's tucked in behind the trees where the next landing is. Now, like I said, Mr. Stratton was unemployed, wondering what his next project would be. Looking across the river here, he could see industry developing on the left-hand side. Wool washers, tanneries and breweries. A major war started, so he decided to get the contract to make uniforms for all the soldiers. All he had to do was cross the river, use the brand new bridge they built, and start his industry, making clothing on the left. And the suburb of Richmond quickly developed into a textile suburb. Anything to do with the manufacturing of clothing or fabric, all originated in Richmond. You see, land has always been cheaper on the left than it is on the right. Even today, houses in Richmond, they start around the $1.5 million mark. Houses on our right, South Yarra and Tirag, they start around the $4 million mark. I don't know what the big deal is. I'd much rather have a house in Richmond and have a view of South Yarra, instead of having a house in South Yarra, have this lovely view of Richmond. I guess it still depends on the correct postal address. Well, today, all these houses on the right-hand side have been turned into apartment buildings. Now, even from the early years, land has always been cheaper on the left than it is on the right. It is quite flat. And when the industry started developing in Melbourne, they required fresh water to run through their machinery, wool washers, tanneries and breweries. And back in the mid-1800s, the Yarra River was all fresh water. It was Melbourne's drinking supply. The unfortunate thing with industry back then, once they finished using the water through their machinery, they were flushing it back into the river in quite a polluted state. And the Yarra River did get severely polluted. Several people got sick, some people died. For some time we were known as Melbourne because we smelled so bad. So we had to develop the Upper Yarra Reservoir and pipe all our drinking water into the city. We also developed the sewer system so industry could flush their polluted water into the sewer, not back into the river. And once again, we do have a clean river. Hands up those that believe me. No one. I don't know why everyone picks on our river. It is quite true. When we talk about clean rivers, we talk about the condition of water. And the river is quite clean. We have several different varieties of fish and bird life that live off the river. Do not be discouraged by the colour. I don't know why everyone picks on our colour. That's the same colour as coffee. We drink that all day long without complaining. The colour is actually quite natural for a combination river, and that's what we have here. Combination fresh water, salt water. You see, fresh water is actually lighter than salt water. It floats on the surface. And it's this fresh water that holds all the soil particles off the banks and farmlands when it rains and gets washed into the river. That's how come we have that brown colour. The clean salt water continually moving with high tide and low tide does not allow the soil particles to settle too quickly. The river actually gets flushed out twice a day with the tidal changes. And that's how we got the nickname of the upside down river. Soil particles on the top, clean salt water underneath, giving the impression the river is flowing upside down, but not really. The only real pollution we get on the river is what's known as surface pollution. Our people don't come down on the water's edge and throw their rubbish in the river. That's highly illegal. It's all the litter that gets dropped in the streets. And when it rains in Melbourne, the excess water from the roadway gets flushed into the river through stormwater drains. And along with it, it brings all the litter that gets dropped in the streets. We do try and control it using litter traps. 17 of these placed throughout the river, all strategically downstream of major benzene stored water drains. One of these litter traps are coming into view here on our right, looking a little bit like a crocodile trap. By the way, we do not have crocodiles here in the Yarra. The sharks ate them all. Theoretically, it is quite possible. I personally have seen a seal and a dolphin come all the way up here with the salt water. So theoretically, we could have sharks as well, but I've yet to see one. And Parks Victoria come along and clean these litter traps once a month. There were the 62 bridges that cross the river. This one in front of us, in my opinion, is the best looking bridge of all, officially known as the Arch Bridge. But if you live in Richmond, Church Street Bridge. If you live in South Yarra, Chapel Street Bridge. I don't care what you call it, as long as you call it beautiful. Bridge comprising 3 main arches. Each arch has 11 more arches going through it. And as we go underneath, if you look up, you'll see there's arches underneath the arches, underneath the arches, underneath the arches, being nicknamed the Bridge of 1,000 Arches. The light towers on the roadway, they are the very first gas lamps to be placed in Melbourne to light up our city streets. Since converted to electricity, but they've kept the original facades there, leaving the bridge looking quite magnificent. It is another steel reinforced concrete bridge completed in the 1920s. We no longer build bridges like this anymore. Today we like nice smooth concrete pillars with other smooth concrete beams on top. Now as Melbourne developed, we fixed our flooding problem. No more major floods in Melbourne, but we did end up with a traffic problem. So they repossessed some of the river, some of the arches of the bridges, and we built the major roadway on our left, the Southeastern Freeway. That still wasn't enough. We had to build 2 more roadways, the Burnley Tunnel and the Domain Tunnel, connecting onto the Southeastern Freeway, going underneath the river, underneath the gardens, coming up, connecting onto the Westgate Freeway. Since we built the freeway on the left, we had to replace the footpath. So now we have this floating footpath on the left, also connecting to the cycle track, running for 40 kilometres all the way up to Wyandotte. Here comes our demonstrator. Very hard to get the timing right. Looking in front of us here, you can see the river falls off into 2 directions. The course on the right is the only natural course of water you'll see today. It is quite narrow and quite windy, and it's these conditions that caused the major flooding problems in Melbourne. Did not allow the rainwater to escape fast enough. And as these soil particles settle to the bottom, they do generate large mudbanks. There are 3 major mudbanks around the original course of the river, one of which coming into view here on our right. That's only half of it. It comes out for another 10 metres. So we're prohibited from travelling around, fear of running aground. We'll take the course on the left. This is a man-made course. Originally, the piece of land in the middle was joined to the suburb of Richmond. There was a quarry here, a bluestone quarry, the Burnley Quarry. But after the major flood, when the quarry was filled with water, what they decided to do was to blast away the 2 end walls, put this straight section through here, a flood relief measure known as the quarry cut. When they did that, they formed a piece of land circled by water. Any piece of land circled by water is known as an island. This originally was known as Como Island because of its close proximity to Como House, an old historic homestead up on the right-hand bank. But what to do with a piece of land sitting there doing nothing? We decided to lease it out to the young scouting movement so that inner suburb scouts and girl guides could go camping and natural bushland without travelling